You've heard you're supposed to raise the stakes for your main character and really your supporting characters as you're crafting a story, but what are some things you need to think about? What are some things you need to be aware of when you're doing that? We're going to talk about that today. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for liking if you find value. Subscribe if you haven't done that. Ring the bell if you want to be notified of new videos. Thank you for doing that. There's a couple of links below that might be helpful to you, just some resources or some learning opportunities for you, so be sure to check those out. Otherwise, let's not waste any more time. Let's jump in. You might have heard the phrase, torture your characters. And what that's talking about is related to stakes. You got to raise the stakes. But when I started out screenwriting, I just kind of thought that that was essentially just moving your character closer and closer to physical death. Like just torture, 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 and then they ultimately die. And like, what do you do after that? But that's not really it. It's more about emotional death. You're going to try to push them to the breaking point. Now that might include some physical peril, for sure, depending on the story you're writing, but it's more like an emotional death. You are putting them into an emotional crisis. So there are some things that you, the author, must know about your characters to be able to effectively raise the stakes. But there's a few mistakes that we actually make. One of the mistakes about raising stakes, this is going to get confusing. One of the mistakes is we just give them random trouble. Like we give our characters random trouble. And it seems like, ooh, we're raising the stakes because I gave them car trouble, or I made them sick, or I made the bus late so they missed the interview, or whatever it is. But those are not raising the stakes. Those are just problems. Those are just obstacles that your character has to overcome. So don't confuse raising the stakes with giving your character problems and obstacles to overcome. The other mistake that gets made a lot, and we're going to start to pull this one apart a little bit, is where you don't give enough emotional impact to your character. Stakes are tied to emotion, just like stories are tied to emotion. So if the storytelling isn't working right, you're probably not engaging the emotion of the audience. And that's what you really want to do. And stakes are no different. You want to be raising the emotion. So you know you have effective stakes if when something happens, both the character and probably the audience both sit back and go, oh no, like this is a problem. Like, oh no. Like you want that kind of response. That's raising the stakes. Otherwise, it's just a problem. It's just an inconvenience. So please don't confuse the two. Now, there are two things that you must know about your character to make effective stakes for them. The first is what their want is. What is it that they are pursuing? What is their goal? And it should be something measurable. This is usually what is called the main tension. It's what ties the whole second act together. What is the main character pursuing? You need to know that very specifically. So it needs to be something measurable. You got to know that. What are they going after? Okay, so that's item number one. Item number two is you want to know their life dream. This is kind of what they imagine happening if they get this want. So they're pursuing the want to get a life dream. Now, you as the author need to know both of those. So let me give you a simple example. Let's just think of an individual who is a co-pilot. Okay, he's got pilot's license, been flying for a while, but he wants to be the captain, the main captain of like a private jet for somebody. That's what he wants. Okay, so that's what he's pursuing. Now, we might think, ooh, if I raise the stakes, I can just make him late to some departure time or something like that. Well, no, that's an inconvenience, okay? That's not where we sit back and go, oh no, right? A time where we might sit back and go, oh no, is let's say the pilot is doing some things and has just got this weird like ringing in his ear, goes to the doctor, and the doctor is like, yeah, you're losing your hearing in this range, and that might actually impact your ability to renew your pilot's license. Like you can't even be a pilot anymore, even though that's what he's wanting. Okay, now that's raising the stakes. Okay, that's something that's like, oh, this is a problem. So now he's got to figure out, okay, is this something I can overcome? Can I get around it? Are there ways around it or not? That's what raising the stakes is. It's this raising of an emotional level where you are impacting the character at an emotional level. You are suddenly making it harder for them to get what they're after because you're putting something so big and so monumental in the way. That is raising the stakes. And that is actually the first consideration that you have to be aware of when raising the stakes. The stakes should impact the want or the life dream of the character. So whatever it is they're pursuing or whatever it is they think that this thing is going to lead them to, that they're ultimately pursuing, the stakes have to impact one of those kind of in a negative way. Like they have to make it harder for the character to get one or the other. Essentially, these are emotional gut punches to the character. They're the things that just totally set them back, that totally have them have to refocus and almost repurpose themselves to continue going forward. If they aren't committed to pushing forward, they're not ever gonna overcome all obstacles. And we like seeing characters struggle and overcome things, but to raise the stakes, you have to raise the stakes in a way that threatens to take what the character really cares about. It threatens to take it away from them. That's raising the stakes. The second consideration to be aware of when raising the stakes is actually you should be moving your character further away from their want and their life dream. You are pushing them away. The stakes make it so that the character almost has to take 2 steps back. Like it pushes them back. Like, I thought I could get this, but now I've got to overcome this, but I also have to overcome this whole other thing that I wasn't even planning to do. This is a whole other level. I've got to rise to the occasion. That is part of raising the stakes. You are making it so much more difficult for your main character. And it's not because you're just giving them problems, okay? There's problems that, okay, we can work around that, we can overcome that. But you are raising the stakes in such a way like you are threatening to take away their livelihood. You are threatening to take away people they care about. You are threatening to take away the things that really matter to them if they continue on in their goal. That's raising the stakes. Another way to think about that is just tightening the screws. Okay, you might have heard this phrase like just tighten the screws, tighten the screws. What that means is you are forcing the main character to start to have to choose between things that they want, that they're going after, and things that maybe they need to do, right? So I've got my want, my life dream, the things I'm pursuing, but you're trying to force this main character into choosing to do their need instead of their want. They want to do this other thing, but they really need to help somebody else or do this other thing, right? And so you are raising the stakes to force them into a specific situation. There's one more consideration that you need to have when raising the stakes, but before I get to that, if you know of a really good movie example of raising the stakes, put that in the comments below. Let other people see that so you can find other examples of raising the stakes and effectively raising the stakes. If you can start to identify them, it actually helps you better at being able to create them yourself for your own stories. Okay, the third consideration for raising the stakes. You know you are raising the stakes effectively if you are forcing your character to choose between continuing on and walking away. If your character at this point could just be like, I'm out. Okay, that's raising the stakes. Now you've done it. If you're just, their phone dies, right? And they need to make a phone call. Okay, that's not raising the stakes. That's just a problem, right? But let's say our co-pilot character, that he fails an eye exam. Okay, that's a problem, right? Like that's raising the stakes. Or the person he wants to work for, the person he wants to be the pilot for, asks him to do something illegal. And we know our character is just completely against doing anything like that. So he can get what he wants by doing something illegal, but he doesn't want to do that. That's raising the stakes. You are forcing an emotional problem for the character. You are making them go, oh no, is this really what I want to do? You're making the audience go, oh no, is this what you really want to do? And it gives the opportunity for your character to choose to walk away or not. And if you are giving your character that choice, that moment of being able to choose, am I going to walk away? Am I not going to walk away? Now you know you're effectively raising the stakes. Ideally, you probably want a few of those in the story. So if you're writing a screenplay, for example, you probably want 3 or 4 moments where you are forcing the character to choose between continuing on or walking away, because the stakes just keep getting notched up, ratcheted up. And there's a couple of reasons that might make a character walk away. One, it might put them in more physical peril than they are willing to be in, right? So maybe they just don't want to do that thing physically. Like, I'm not going to do it. Maybe it goes against their moral code. Maybe it impacts people they love or people they care about even more. Maybe it takes somebody they care about away from them. So that is what raising the stakes is. It's this emotional gut punch to the character, and you have to, when you start raising the stakes, start thinking about how is this going to emotionally impact the character, not physically, okay? Not just physically. Sometimes maybe, but usually it's not physically. Usually it's an emotional gut punch that's tightening the screws on them, that's making it worse for them emotionally. So to raise the stakes effectively, you've really got to be doing three things. One, you've got to interfere with the character's want and life dream. They're wanting something, they're dreaming about something, you're going to interfere with that on some level. So it's going to block that and make it more difficult for them to get that. Two, it's also going to push them away. It's going to make it not only where you're blocking it, it's now even harder for them to get to that. And three, you have to think about how is this going to force this character to choose between continuing on or just quitting, just outright, I'm out. Now, typically in stories, characters don't quit, right? Because then the story would be over. So they're still going to choose to go through, but they need that moment of, am I really going to do it? Yes, I'm really going to do it. And we're, as the audience, if we're on their side, we're cheering. We're like, yeah, go do it. Okay. And they just pursue. So you need those three things. If you don't have those three things, you're not going to be able to effectively raise the stakes. Hopefully this has been helpful to you. If it has, please be sure to like, subscribe, bell, all those things. I really do appreciate it. When you go to tell a story, raise the stakes and tell a story that matters. See you later.